the curse causeless shall not come. There is always a reason. So what I'm going to have a look at is what is medicine doing to reduce heart disease? Well, it probably started in about the 70s, 80s that everyone was told to go fat-free or low-fat. And everyone was told stop butter and start eating margarine. Has that helped? No, not at all, because it's still the number one killer in the world today. So this low-fat, no-fat diet using margarine instead of butter had no less in heart disease at all. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. The fact is that Alzheimer's and dementia rates have started to rise because the fattiest organ in the body is the brain, and it loves and it needs fat. So let's look at the cell for a moment. This is the nerve cell, and the membrane around the nerve cell is very similar to the membrane around every other cell, and this membrane is 50% fat. But where the fat increases is this arm that comes out of the cell. It's got a fatty sheath around it, and that ups it. Is vegetarian, never smoked, never drunk, very fit, goes to Europe every year, cycling 200 kilometres, plays the bagpipes, got great lungs, but he was getting breathless. So his friend, because he's a doctor and his friend's a cardiologist, he did an angiogram on him. They put the dye to see what the blood vessels are doing, and he said, whoa, you've got 80%. What's 80%? You've got 80% blockage of the arteries. There's about an 80%, this here. So they rushed him in, sawed his chest open. I used to assist in the operating theatre in bypasses. That's what they do, saw the chest open, claw it open, dig in, cut an artery out of your leg, cut the offending one out, sew this one in, sew you up. It's a major operation. And when I talked to him about a week later, he said, Barb, it's genetics. I said, genetics loads the gun, Dave. Lifestyle pulls the trigger. He said, And he came to our retreat a couple of weeks after that. So in our first consultation together, I put my detective hat on. I wanted to know why this happened to Dave, and how many people who drink and smoke and have a high meat, high sugar diet say, well, what's the point? Look at him. So I began to investigate, and the first question was, do you have a happy, healthy childhood, Dave? You see, we are what we are today because of all our history. And part of being your own doctor is documenting your case. Start to write down your history, because often when you write it down, you see little links here and there. You can't change what happened in the past, but it often explains what's happening today. He said, I had a fairly happy childhood. He said, I had one brother. Our parents were chain smokers. Do you know there's 7,000 chemicals in cigarettes today? And passive smoke is often more dangerous. My auntie died of lung cancer at the age of 65, and she had never smoked in her life, but her husband of 27 years smoked all the time, in the house, in the bedroom, in the kitchen. And he lived till he was 85. Incredible. Sometimes you see things like that. So what's happening in David's arteries? Let's draw David's artery here. So I would like to suggest that by the age of 15, David probably had maybe 15% occlusion of his arteries at the age of 15. And they've done post-mortems on young people that have died at 15, and they have found this. Already it's building up. And he said to me, actually 10 years ago, I wanted to put on muscle. Now, why did David want to put on muscle? Because he was eating a typical unfortunately, vegetarian diet, which was cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea. And his wife made these lovely sugar biscuits. Just too much sweet, too many carbohydrates. So something else is happening with that. But first of all, I'll build up the artery. He started to eat fish. So he said, I ate tuna every day. And we had a tuna fisherman do our program. He said, we catch 10-foot tuna. You see, that's a huge accumulation of mercury. There's hardly a fish today without mercury. The bigger the fish, the higher the accumulation of mercury, because mercury is bioaccumulative. You know what bioaccumulative means? It accumulates. That's why the longer the mercury fillings are in the mouth, the more it's accumulating in the tissues. If you have mercury fillings, please find a biological dentist and start to take them out. People say, well, I've had them in my mouth all my life. They haven't hurt me. Well, you know what they're doing? Little by little, they're eating away at this. And it's not until that myelin sheath is 2/3 eaten away that you start to see the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. And that's what happened to David. After 1 year of having tuna every day, he started to show the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. He was also on the fat-free diet. On the fat-free diet, and he's got 80% occlusion. See, it's not the fat. So because he's having so much mercury, more damage, more damage, more damage, more damage, more damage. What's happening now? Build up, build up, build up, build up, build up. And so what's the effect of this high carbohydrate, high sugar diet? All through the blood, there are little protein molecules. And when someone's eating a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet, they've got excess glucose floating around, and it connects with these little protein molecules and it becomes sticky. They're called ages. They become sticky. And what happens is, if there's a particularly narrow part, one of these can become dislodged and get stuck. If that happens in the carotid artery, that's a stroke. If it happens in the heart, that's a cardiac arrest. And it appears that it is the carotid arteries and the heart arteries, more than arteries anywhere in the body, that this accumulation happens. To blame cholesterol for heart disease is like blaming the fire trucks for the fire. Well, they must be causing the fire. Have you noticed they're always there? Cholesterol's just doing what God designed it to do. And when David saw this, he immediately stopped his medication. You see, no matter who you are, no matter what your age, no matter what your size, no matter what your history, there's a protocol. And if you have a stroke or heart attack, you're given that protocol. What's the protocol? Blood thinning medication, cholesterol lowering medication, and blood pressure medication. Am I right? I see it all the time. No matter who you are. See, David didn't need any of that. David just needed to adjust his diet. And he discovered at our health retreat, he doesn't need to eat tuna. He just needs to eat more legumes, have more nuts and seeds. How many people don't eat nuts for a month, then get a packet of cashews and eat the whole lot in the afternoon? Well, the very sad story about that is you can get an allergy to it. And I don't know about you, but I don't want an allergy to cashews. I love cashews. A lovely way to end a meal is to have a little handful of nuts at every meal. That's what I do. Sometimes I have pecans, sometimes I have cashews. Delicious way to end a meal is to have a little handful of nuts. And so this explains why David's arteries were as they are. We had a lady come from London. She's 47. She had a stroke. They did an angiogram on her and her arteries were clear. Yeah. And she'd had a stroke. But you know what they put her on? Cholesterol lowering medication, blood thinning medication, the whole lot. I said, why are you on all this? She said, well, that's what they said I've got to go on. She said, if I don't, she said, I could have another stroke. She said, oh, another stroke. We should never make a decision on fear. Remember what God said? I have not given you the spirit of fear. Power, knowledge is power. Love holds us together. A sound mind weighs up the pros and cons. I said to her, tell me about the week before the stroke. Well, she looked a little embarrassed, and I knew she didn't want to tell me, but she did. She said, well, I'm the CEO of a big company in London. She said, we had a deadline to meet. We had a big project, and the deadline had to be met. And she said, my right-hand man was on holiday, so I just had to do it. So she was getting 3 hours sleep a night. Okay, we're going to go through these basic laws and show how the broken law is a good recipe for heart disease. Sleep. She was getting 3 hours a night, and she was living on coffee to keep her awake. Coffee causes a crisis response in the body, and whenever there's a crisis response, our blood pressure rises. Our blood pressure rises to give us the energy we need for the fight or the flight or the run, or whatever. So coffee is well known to up that blood pressure. She said, I wasn't eating much. I was just grabbing anything that I could find. So nutrition was down. She said, I wasn't drinking water because I didn't want to have to keep going to the bathroom. I had a lot of work to do. In the book, The Ministry of Healing, the author says, these laws of health are the true remedies, and I found them to be true. And they're it's your yardstick, it's your guideline. So with this girl, I'm ticking all the boxes. Broken. Highly stressed. No trust in God. No trust in God. Just trusting in herself and making herself work harder and harder. No sunshine when you're in a high-rise building for days on end with no sleep. And then finally, the body just stopped her. Have you noticed that? You see, because she was so stressed and the pressure was mounting, she's not drinking water, she's not getting any sleep, stressed out, she's having too much coffee, putting the sugar in to give her energy. Her blood is getting thicker. With the stress, her blood vessels are constricting, and she had a stroke. And it was just by the grace of God that one of her workers happened to come in just at that moment. And of course the paramedics came and she was saved. But she had an angiogram and her arteries were clear. Can you clear these arteries out? So 80% occlusion, you're looking at about this. And it could be cigarette smoke, it could be chemicals from many different, it could be mold. Mold is toxic. Mold gets in here, it damages the arteries. And then if someone's on the high carbohydrate diet, you've got these little ages floating around and they move and they get stuck. So I'm very thankful for Dr. Agatha Thrash. Her and her husband, Calvin Thrash, they started Uchi Pines. I think it's a health retreat in Georgia. Alabama, somewhere down there. And if she was still alive, if they were alive, they'd probably be in their hundreds now. But the retreat's still running, but she told a fascinating story. You see, why did they start the health retreat? I think back in the 70s or 80s, they were just so discouraged with medicine. They're both medical doctors. They were both so discouraged that patients weren't getting better. And they'd read the book, The Ministry of Healing, and they knew God had another way. So their retreat's been running for a long time. But she told this story, which is a remarkable story. They had a lady in her 70s attend their program, I think mid-70s, and she was an alcoholic. She'd been an alcoholic for something like 30 years. And she was having breathing problems, and they discovered she had 80% occlusion of two of her main arteries, but they did not want to do a bypass on her because of her age and because of the weakness of her body from years of alcoholism and cigarettes, tobacco abuse. And so her family paid for her to come to the retreat. The first 24 hours was not fun for her. There was no coffee, there was no alcohol, there was no cigarettes, but she knew that it was the only thing she could do. And the staff are so lovely. They gave her hot foot baths and massaged her shoulders. They gave her herbs to relax and ease her through. So after 48 hours, she started to feel much better. In fact, it's almost like she came out of a fog. If she were to do this on her own at home, it could take sometimes 2 weeks. But when you do the juicing and the steam bath, it just speeds everything up. Speeds the waste coming out of the body big time. She started walking. She started enjoying the food. In fact, she said, "Does this food taste great, or is it just because I've stopped smoking?" They said, "We like to think a bit of both." On the 4th day, she opened the drawer next to her bed and she found a Bible. And she went to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and she read all the stories of Jesus. And her heart was stricken. She said, "I've abused this amazing body that you gave me, God." And so she asked God to forgive her, and she asked God to come into her life. And her whole life turned around. So that week was transforming in her life. And at the end of the week, she said to Agatha, "Do I have to go home?" So Agatha found a room that she could stay in, and she helped a little bit with the laundry and the garden, and the family were very happy because, it had been a perplexity to them what to do with Mum. She walked every day. I think the next 10 months were the best of her life. And one day they noticed that she hadn't come down for breakfast, so they went to her room. She was still in bed, but she was dead. She died in her sleep. So Agatha did a post-mortem on her and found that an embolism in her brain had burst. See, her blood vessels were weak from the many years of abuse. But she just about had a smile on her face. And I think, if I'm going to go, what a nice way to go, in your sleep. But Agatha did a post-mortem on her a little bit further. She had a look at her main arteries in the heart, that the angiogram had shown 80% occlusion, and these arteries were clear. They were clear. Isn't that incredible? Why were they clear? She started to have sunshine. She started drinking water. She started going to bed early. She learned to trust in the great God of heaven. She'd stopped all the damaging chemicals that were coming in to damage her arteries. She learned to breathe through her nose, which was not easy at first. She started to have some nourishing food. She only ate 2 meals a day. She ate in moderation, and she started exercising. Isn't that good news? How simple is that? It's almost too simple, isn't it? But I'm very thankful for this story that Agatha Thrash told, because it's not easy to get an absolute comparison. But she'd had the angiogram 10 months before, 80% occlusion, and now at the post-mortem it showed clear arteries. And this is in a woman whose body was not running very well because of the years and years of abuse. How much easier it would be on a younger person, how much easier for someone that hasn't got a history of that abuse. When I was at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, I used to do a live blood analysis. And I used to look at the blood under the microscope. And the blood moves around like this. You see it jumping around. It's going very fast because it only takes 1 minute for one drop to go around the whole body. But very occasionally, I'd see blood that was clumped like this. In fact, I saw the blood of a lady one morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was like this. I always presume I've spoiled the slide. It's very easy to spoil a slide. 5 blood slides later, it still looks like that. I said, have you had any water to drink today? She said, no. See, the most dehydrated time of the whole day is when we wake up in the morning. I said, what have you had today? She said, a cup of tea. What's tea got in it? Tannin and caffeine, both dehydrating agents. And if sugar's put in there, another dehydrating agent. So she woke up dehydrated, had a cup of tea, which dehydrated her even more. How many people in America and Australia wake up to a cup of tea? I remember Dr. Batman Gehaldi's book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. His second title is He's Not Sick, He's Thirsty. Don't treat thirst with medication. Because sometimes the symptom of dehydration can be a headache, stomach pain, joints pain. There can be a whole lot of symptoms and people don't realise it's actually dehydration. I said, have you had anything else? She said, a banana. Now, how many people would think that a cup of tea and a banana is pretty good? It's not a Coke and a croissant. It's not. Banana, doesn't that have moisture? Yes, but we need moisture to actually digest the banana. So how much oxygen is being picked up on these cells that are well hydrated? Oh, they're getting nice pickups of oxygen. How much oxygen's been picked up here? Can you see the surface area that's been lost? That's why a person can have symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome, because they're dehydrated. That's why I know the best blood thinner is water. Because when I saw that, it was always that they hadn't drunk water. So if I look at this lady's blood the next day, I'll see that. In fact, I saw her a week later, she said, I'm drinking my water. I can't get that picture out of my brain of my clumped cells. But when you consider how dehydrating tea and coffee and soda and Coke and all of those drinks are, no wonder so many people are dehydrated. And yet how many people are put on aspirin? Are you ready for the side effects of aspirin? Stomach bleed, brain bleed, and eye bleed. So it's one of the main causes of stomach ulcers, also contributing to eye problems and contributing to brain problems. And yet there is a herb called cayenne pepper. And cayenne pepper is an excellent blood thinner. Cayenne pepper does 3 main things to the blood vessels. Number 1, it thins the blood, but it'll never go so thin that when you knock your arm you'll bleed or you'll bruise. It thins the blood. Number 2, it's a vasodilator. What's a vasodilator? A vasodilator is something that causes the blood vessels to open. And when the blood vessels all through the body open, that takes pressure off the heart. Now, if you remember yesterday morning when we looked at the respiratory, we looked at 2 vasodilators. Nose breathing. Nose purifies the air, humidifies the air, warms the air. It pressurizes the air, making it perfect for the lungs, but it also balances blood gases. What are the blood gases that it balances? It balances oxygen. And the way it balances oxygen is by maintaining correct amounts of carbon dioxide. That's what nose breathing does. Nose breathing balances the blood gases. And it's only when you nose breathe in and out through the nose that nitric oxide is released. And carbon dioxide and nitric oxide are both vasodilators. And that's why James Nestor and his friend, when they plugged up their nose for 10 days, their blood pressure went through the roof, along with other things. After 10 days, they unplugged their noses and taped their mouth up. Within 24 hours, the blood pressure had come down. Just the difference between nose and mouth breathing. And if you find it hard to breathe through your mouth, you can tape your mouth up. You won't die. You will breathe through your nose. So nose breathing helps to get the blood pressure down. Nose breathing also helps to calm. When you breathe through your nose with your abdominal muscles, that stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your peaceful, calming nervous system. Whereas mouth breathing in the chest, that stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. And your sympathetic nervous is your fight and your flight nervous system. So just breath, breathing the correct way. Our abdominal muscles were designed to aid in the breathing process. But if you're hunched, you can't use your abdominal muscles. And to help stand straight, we need to strengthen our abdominal muscles. They're all connected to our spine. Best thing you can do for your back is strengthen your abdominal muscles. So breath helps. The third thing cayenne pepper does is it strengthens the arterial walls. So it helps to clear those blood vessels. We had a man from Samoa attend our program. He was a real traditional Samoan. He had a lot of tattoos on him. In fact, I didn't see him without his clothes on. I saw him with not many clothes on, but it's almost as if, an outfit was tattooed on him. I guess traditionally the Samoans did that. And he had 80 and 90% occlusion. And he contacted us and he said, I do not want a bypass. Can you help? And we said, we believe so. We believe so. Because what we do is we teach you how to give the body the right conditions. When he first came, he was breathless. Now, when you've got an artery that is 80% blocked, you haven't got a lot of blood going through. And it's the blood that carries the oxygen. And so that is one of the symptoms of it being fairly blocked up is breathlessness. In fact, walking up the hill, he was, I think he was early 60s. He could only do a few steps and he'd get breathless. He was carrying a little bit of excess weight, maybe about 30-pound excess weight. By the end of the week, he was walking up the hill. Do you know what that tells me? I wouldn't be surprised, and of course, how would you know? God in heaven only knows. I wouldn't be surprised if the build-up on his arteries was reducing just in a week because he wasn't getting breathless anymore. So he chose not to have the operation. His family were upset because, where did my fear go? His family were upset because the doctor had said, if you don't go in and have this bypass now, you're not going to make it. But remember, it's an opinion. And so he chose not to do that. And they wanted him on aspirin, they wanted him on Eliquis is a similar one, they wanted him on blood thinning medication, they wanted him on statin drugs, and they wanted him on blood pressure medication. And he said no. He said, no, I'm not going on any of that, I'm going to the retreat. And by the end of the week, he was walking. Now, his arteries aren't clear yet. And of course, you don't know, and I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in having dye put into my veins to see what my veins are. I believe your body will tell you if there's a problem. That's why it's important to learn to listen. Listen to the body. But so many people are deteriorating too young, and they think it's age. Poor old age gets blamed for so many things. We have a book in our library at home. It's called Lipitor, Thief of Memory. Lipitor and Crestor are another two common cholesterol-lowering medication. And the book is by a Dr. Graveline. And he's a doctor, and he's also an astronaut. And every year he has a blood test. And he went and had the blood test, and let me see, where can I draw this? The cholesterol levels, his cholesterol levels were 200. And the doctor said, too high, 200. The doctor said, too high. So he put him on Lipitor. And he went on Lipitor through fear. Where's the fear? He doesn't want to have a heart attack. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know where he was. So they stopped the Lipitor. Within 48 hours, his mind was clear. So he stayed off that. 10 months later, he went and had his yearly blood test. Cholesterol level still 200. The doctor said, still too high. I want you to go back on Lipitor. And Dr. Graveline said, no, I'm not going on that. I nearly went mad on that. And the doctor said, this is very rare. Why did the doctor say that? Because the pharmaceutical representatives tell them it's rare. But as you will see, it is not rare. I don't think the doctor's lying. He's just doing what the pharmaceutical company has told him, and he's just trusting that they've done their research, but they have not. So Psalm 146 verse 3, it says, put not your trust in princes. I believe the doctors should not put so much trust in the pharmaceutical companies. They're not doctors. The pharmaceutical reps are not doctors. They have not done the study. They're just doing what they're told. And if you notice, they send the most beautiful girls dressed in the most beautiful clothes, and they have offers of holidays in Hawaii, and it's not right. It's not right. And so he said, no, I'm not going back on that. And so his doctor said, what about half dose? Because you're a walking, talking heart attack, and he didn't want to die. So he went on half dose. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden. He didn't know who she was, where he was. So they stopped, and within 48 hours, his mind was clear. So he put his story up on a social media site. Thousands of hits. Same thing happened to me. I'm just very thankful for the people that God brings across my pathway. So 10 years ago, I was running a retreat in Alabama at Living Springs, and there was a nutritionist there. She's 69, and she said, I've got the advantage of being in university 40 years ago. She said 40 years ago, a cholesterol level of 300 was considered perfectly normal. Did you hear that? Perfectly normal? And then last year I was in Maryland and I was talking to a pathologist. This lady was in her 70s. She said, I used to do all the testing for cholesterol levels. She said, we considered a cholesterol level of 350 perfectly normal. And yet what are we told today? We are told it has to be under 190. Am I right? And if you go down to 150, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to make your sex hormones, you're not going to be able to make any vitamin D, and your brain's not going to work very well. Remember what Dr. Malcolm Kendrick said? For the first time, normal levels of a normal, vital body substance is being called a disease, and that's cholesterol. I'm not a doctor. I call myself a journalist. I'm just gathering all this information and presenting it to you because a great wrong has been done. the Framingham Heart Study. The Framingham Heart Study was set up probably about 40 years ago now, and they set it up to prove that cholesterol causes heart disease. I think about 35,000 people have been in the study. Some die, more come on. It's 40 years later now, and it still hasn't proved that cholesterol causes heart disease. I like this study. It wasn't funded by the pharmaceutical companies or the wheat industry or the dairy industry or the sugar industry or the meat industry. It's an independent study. But you know what it did find? That people with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Do you need a moment's silence to digest that one? People with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's because the brain loves cholesterol. You know what cholesterol does? It protects our nerve cells. Eesh. So this is what else medicine has done. They've lowered the levels. So putting people on statin drugs, lowering the levels, putting them on a fat-free diet, has that reduced heart disease? Not at all. Not at all. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. No, well, very little heart disease before the Industrial Revolution. We're told that saturated fat causes heart disease. But the South Pacific Islanders have been eating coconut for thousands of years, sometimes 3 times a day. And when Captain Cook landed on those islands, no sickness, no heart attacks, no strokes, no cancers, no diabetes. Coconut oil has stood the test of time. So what happened in the Industrial Revolution? Because before then, depending on where you lived, if you lived in the Mediterranean, you ate olive oil. If you lived in the equator, it was coconut or palm oil. And if you lived further up in, I think, sunflower oil, because that's a fairly easy oil made from bits of soft seeds. But if you go further up, it was probably animal fats, like in butters and creams and cheeses. But you know, way back then, it was organic and it was raw. There's a big difference between organic raw and what you find in the supermarket. And there was very little heart disease. So what happened in the Industrial Revolution? In the Industrial Revolution, high heat chemical equipment was developed to be able to extract oil from hard seeds. And extracting oil from hard seeds using high heat destroys the oil. Using chemicals contaminates the oil. And all of those oils, you will see them in the supermarket. They're the cheapest oils. They're in clear plastic bottles, canola oil, soy oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, all the cheap oils. Don't touch them because they get into the blood and they are actually also damaging the arterial walls. They're toxic. So they're another contributing factor. So we were told, stop the saturated fat, stop the butters, start going low fat, start going the polyunsaturated fats. The polyunsaturated fats, the polyunsaturated oils, they're the worst because they're being damaged. Polyunsaturated oils or fats are excellent if you eat the nut and eat the seed. Poly means many, many openings, and those openings are sensitive to light, heat, and oxygen. The most stable oil is saturated. It's called saturated because there's no empty spots. It's a stable oil. I find that people in their 70s and 80s, they're really affected by demonizing of the fat. They won't touch it. And then you come down to 50s, 60s, they're starting to wake up a bit. Then you come down to the 20s, 30s, they don't seem to have a problem with fat at all because there's the paleo diet and there's the keto diet and there's the zone diet. So And this is what one writer said. He said it's going to take a whole generation to get fat phobia out of the brain. Fat's not the problem. It's an essential nutrient. But what is the problem is those cheap seed oils that have, it doesn't matter that they're in a plastic bottle because they're already totally damaged. They're already totally damaged. Don't touch them. They're nasty oils. And they get in and they damage the tissues. So these three options, these three steps that medicine has taken, it hasn't lowered heart disease at all. And as I've just showed you, they're not the cause of heart disease. The cause of heart disease, and it must be the Industrial Revolution because that's when it began. And that's when we started to be exposed to environmental poisons. Because in the Industrial Revolution, they did not only develop equipment to get seed oil out of hard seeds, they also developed chemical fabrics. They developed chemicals to clean bathrooms with. They developed herbicides and insecticides to put on plants. And now we know why heart disease is the number one killer, because of our exposure to all of this. So how can you reduce blood pressure? And if someone has high blood pressure, they're told to stop salt. Is that right? Well, I'd like to show you why. So here is the cell, and it's got a bilayered membrane around the cell. And the highest concentration of mineral in the cell is potassium, and the highest outside the cell is sodium. And there are sodium-potassium pumps in that membrane, and those sodium-potassium pumps are constantly going like this, maintaining potassium and sodium levels in and out of the cell. But the problem today is the salt that people eat. You see, seawater contains 92 minerals. And of those 92 minerals, 30% is sodium and 50% is chloride. Now, because this makes up the highest amount of minerals, they're the first minerals formed. So what man does is he scoops sodium chloride off, bleaches it white, puts aluminium with it, there's your table salt. Now that table salt's a dangerous salt. In fact, you inject it straight into the veins, you'd kill a person. To make up salt, it's a teaspoon of salt to a cup of water. Let's say you make up a fish tank full of seawater made out of sodium chloride and water. Teaspoon of salt to a cup of water. Fill up a fish tank. Get fish from the sea, put it in that fish tank, they all die. We need to take sodium into our body the way God made it, which is all the minerals. You see, there's 4 vital elements needed for life. Number 1's oxygen, number 2's water. That's not a surprise. Number 3 is sodium. But we need to take sodium in the way God made it. So the Baja salt that we were given the other day, the Baja salt, and also the Celtic salt, and these 2 salts are hand harvested in the traditional method, and the drying is from solar and wind. And as soon as it's dried, it's scooped up. So these salts contain approximately 82 minerals. That's the way we should be having salt. But when someone's just having that refined salt, and they're putting refined salt on everything, such harsh minerals, it kills the taste buds. Have you noticed you'll serve a meal and the person won't even taste it and they'll just flood it with the salt? That's because they've killed their taste buds. And you have a look at most fast foods, they're incredibly salty with the sodium chloride. So what happens when someone's not eating any fruits and vegetables? Potassium levels drop. and they're putting table salt on everything, sodium levels rise. And because of what happens with osmosis and diffusion, the highest concentration goes into the lowest, so too much sodium's getting into the cell, and when too much sodium gets into the cell and sodium levels rise, that causes that cell to swell. There's your high blood pressure. The doctor's right. Refined salt will give you high blood pressure. Dr. Jacques de Langry, he wrote a book, he's passed now, but he wrote a book called Sea Salt's Hidden Power. He said, if I get a patient with high blood pressure, I put them on Celtic salt. He's French, and Celtic's hand harvested from France. He said it brings it down because what it does is it restores balance in and out of the cell. Dr. Jacques de Langry, he calls our internal fluids our internal ocean because it's the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found in seawater. So how come they only have 82 and not 92? Well, some are in such pico proportions, barely measurable, that it's inevitable that some are lost in the evaporation process. If you've trained yourself out of salt, and you start to use the Baha or the Celtic salt, please start small and ease your body back into it. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, the Bible says, ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men. It's Old English. I love the poeticness. If the salt has lost its savour, I'd like to suggest that table salt has lost its savour. It's lost all the other minerals. It's now good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden underfoot of man. And when I was in Minneapolis in the middle of winter, I saw it. They throw salt on the road to melt the ice. This table salt, this refined salt, 80% of it is used in industry. The other 20% is sent to humans, not good. So there's salt and there's salt. And unfortunately, because doctors do not study nutrition, well, actually, they used to study 2 hours in 7 years. I think it's gone up to 4 hours in 7 years, but not enough. That they're not aware of what I've just described to you, comparing the whole salt and the refined salt. But also, there is a herb. Remember Psalm 104, verse 14, that God gave herbs for the service of man, and that is the hawthorn berry. And the hawthorn berry strengthens the heart. If the blood pressure's low, it'll bring it up. If it's high, it'll bring it down. And the hawthorn berry is a very safe herb. In fact, you can even take 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams a day. And it can be taken in conjunction with medication. If someone were to ask my advice, I say to people, I have no authority over your medication, only you and your doctor do. But if I were you, I would stop the statin drugs immediately. There will be a symptom, and that is your memory will return. You can be on statin drugs for 10 years and stop immediately. There is no adverse effect other than that your mind will become clear. One lady said, what can I take instead of statin? Well, there's no need to take anything instead of statins because there's no need to even take them. But what you can do is you can start going through your house and eliminate all the chemicals. You can also start to check that you have no mold in your house. You can start buying organic food. You can start exercising every day. You can start eating nourishing food. You can start breathing through your nose. Don't you love the way that God's remedies are free? Don't you love the way they're within reach of every single person? Is the simple lifestyle habits. People say to me, what supplements do you take, Barbara? I say, I don't. but I do this every day. People say, how do you keep up the pace? I'm in a different place every week, and I have been for the last 5 months. I say, I've found a formula, and it works. It's the sustain me principles. And one lady said, Barbara, you're so disciplined. I said, well, it works. It works. And 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, if you're on a good thing, stick to it. So as we close, I'd like to end with the story of Henry. Henry was a retired judge. He came to our retreat. He was on 6 different medication. He was on medication for gout, for stomach ulcer, for blood sugars, for blood thinners, blood pressure, and also statin drugs. He was on 6 different medications. He was carrying about maybe 40-pound excess weight. He'd retired from the bench. He was 63. So I said to him, are you interested in stopping any of your medication? He said, no, thank you very much. I'm very happy with my medication. Now, I respect everyone's choice, as I like to be respected for my choices. But we put him on hawthornberry. We made up a tea mix, and he drank a litre of that every day through the day. At the end of the week, he said, I very much enjoyed my week. I'd like to take hawthornberry home and see how that goes. 4 months later, I get a call. It's Henry. He said, can I visit? I want to get some more hawthornberries. I want to get some of my friends off their medication. I said, come for lunch, Henry. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognise him. So in 4 months, he'd lost 20 kilo. That would be 40 pound. He looked so good. All the puffiness from his face had gone. He said, yes, I can do my coat up now. He said, sit down, Barbara, I have some stories for you. I went to the doctor recently and he took my blood pressure, got up and started to walk out. And Henry said, what are you doing? He said, well, the machine's broken. And he said, well, why do you say that? He said, well, the machine says that your blood pressure is 120 on 70 and your blood pressure is not that. His blood pressure on medication was 160 on 90. And Henry said, that's my blood pressure now. His doctor took him off all his medication because his blood sugar was normal, his blood pressure was normal, everything was normal. He had no more gout. He had no more stomach ulcer pain. Incredible. I think it's an incredible story because he just did it. He was a very decisive man. I think he would have been a very good judge. I said, tell me about your exercise program, Henry. He said, I find I can walk another week every month. So as he gets stronger, as he loses weight, as his muscle gets stronger, his heart gets stronger, he can go further with less effort and less time. I said, tell me about your food. He said, I have a big bowl every morning with chopped up fruit. He said, a whole grain cereal. I either have millet sometimes, brown rice sometimes, oats sometimes. He said, I'll put it in the crock pot. He's got a little tiny crock pot, slow cooker. I put it in overnight. He said, I put coconut milk on it. I grind up flaxseed and I have a slice of sourdough toast with avocado and tomato. That's not a light diet. Oh, and he said, I have some nuts. He said, I don't eat again till lunch. He was a bachelor. He said, at lunch, I make a salad. I either steam or bake some veggies, and I do one of your recipes out of your Self-Heal by Design legume recipe. He said, I'll make one of them, and that'll last me a few days. And I might have another slice of sourdough toast with avocado and tomato and some nuts. That's not a light diet. He said, and I do not eat again till breakfast. So he was having the 2 meals a day, and as you can see, he's eating very well, and he leaves 5-6 hours between meals, and in 4 months, he's lost 40 pounds. And that's what our guests say to us. They say it's not like we're not even on a diet because we're eating so well. The best weight loss diet is a diet where you're not hungry. And there are 3 foods that keep the food in the stomach, and that's fiber, proteins, and fats. I'd like to suggest that this fat-free diet has caused so many people to eat too many carbohydrates. And that's what's causing that weight gain. That's what's feeding those cancer cells, as we saw in the last lecture. So he was a very happy chappy, and he just said, I'm feeling so good, I'm thinking maybe I'll go back to work for another 5 years. How many people are retiring when there's actually no need? And how many people retire and deteriorate very, very quickly? Now, we live in an incredible body. It's got an inbuilt ability to heal itself. And as you'll see by what I've shown you, it will when you give it the right conditions. Now, Henry at first took the hawthorn berry every day. He quite liked the tea, so he made a litre of tea every day. But when he came to visit me, he was no longer on the hawthorn berry tea because his blood pressure was back to normal. Oh, and he said, I don't need my total knee replacement operation anymore because the knees are happy because he's lost so much weight. It was an incredible story. What healed Henry? His body. His body healed him when it's given the right conditions. I think we're going to do some question and answers now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you cure a yeast infection?
Okay, well, we've discovered what feeds a yeast injection, and that's sugar. In my book, Sustain in Self-Heal by Design, it's a book on the true role of microorganisms in disease. And in that book, as I mentioned in my last lecture, I've got the cancer conquering diet, but I've also got the antifungal stage 1 and the antifungal stage 2 diet. And I also showed the herbs that you can take. So it's all outlined in that book.
Okay, thank you. How do circadian rhythm factor into sleep time and melatonin production?
Well, the circadian rhythm and the melatonin, they're all affected by light and dark signals. And what really disrupts them is looking at screens after dark. And having sunshine in the day resets the circadian rhythm. And that's why I don't really suffer from jet lag. When I come from Australia to America, there might be one night where I'm awake half the night, but only one night. And what I do is I go outside. I don't look at the sun, but I let the sun's rays come because it's the light and dark signals that reset the circadian rhythm. In his book, Depression A Way Out, Dr. Neil Nedley, he found that about 80% of his depressed patients, their circadian rhythm was out. And the circadian rhythm is most effectively set by the first hour of light in a day.
Thank you. Okay, this one is recommendations on cleansers for heavy metals and parasite cleanses.
With parasites, they're opportunist organisms, so they're just going to live in a body that has got a lot of waste and chemicals in it. And so going through the liver detox helps, also colon cleansers help, and there are herbs that will kill parasites, and that is wormwood and black walnut and oregano oil. And I know Jack at OK Be Healthy, you can find her website when you go to officialbarbaronell.com. She sells a really good parasite mix.
Okay, thank you.
And the other one was
Metals.
The herbs that help to chelate and get metals out of the body are cilantro and chlorella. Chlorella is an algae, and you can buy chlorella in tablet or capsule form.
Thank you. From the hips down, I have pain when standing or walking. I must stop and sit and then walk more. What can I do? They want to do surgery, but I say no.
Well, I'm not sure what the surgery is. I guess if they want to do surgery, it indicates there's some sort of problem, and I don't know where the problem is in the knee or the hip or the lower back. But I was being interviewed by a orthopedic surgeon in London. His name's Doc Malik. And so he does podcasts now because they won't let him use the operating theatre because he hasn't taken the shot. But he said to me that he, instead of doing operations on his patients, he was doing lifestyle. He was getting them to change their lifestyle and get physiotherapists. He said it got to the point he was only operating on 5% of his patients. Isn't that incredible? Do you know what that means? A lot of surgeries are unnecessary. So I'm not sure why this is happening. There must be some problem there, but yeah, there's a chapter in my book on arthritis and there's a chapter in my book on bones. So maybe there'll be answers in there for this lady.
Thank you. Since COVID, I lost my sense of smell. It's been 3 years now. Any suggestions to help my sense of smell come back?
Zinc is very good for returning smell and breathing only through the nose.
What about modern wheat made into sourdough? Is that okay?
If someone doesn't have an allergy, and if someone doesn't have irritable bowel, and if someone doesn't have yeast problem, and if someone does not have skin problems or sinus problems, it's the best way to eat wheat is a sourdough.
Thank you. This one, can you provide, it says meds, to help reduce high blood pressure like you gave today for diabetic?
I think that question might have been written before this lecture.
Okay.
Because the answers are here.
What are your thoughts on the Hertz sounds for healing? Hertz, Hertz. Hertz sounds for healing.
Yeah, the frequency, I guess I don't know a lot about that, but it could help.
Bladder cancer, what to do, what protocol?
In Self-Heal by Design, I have the dietary protocol like we looked at in our last lecture, but also with bladder cancer, what would help is the alternating hot and cold sitz baths, which is sitting in hot, sitting in cold. That does a lot for bladder cancer. So I would suggest going to Eden Valley because they have built-in sitz baths, they have fever baths, they have hyperbaric chamber, and they're very similar to our program.
Okay. Recommendations or information on heart palpitations, heart flutter, fast beat.
What can really help with fast beat is breath, is taking those very deep, slow breaths. 5 in, holding for 3, 5 out, breathing through the nose. That stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which can calm the heart. Often if someone goes to hospital with that, they just do IV magnesium. So take a big shot of magnesium because magnesium is a muscle relaxant. Sometimes stress can cause it. Caffeine can trigger it. Also wheat can trigger it because wheat has been hybridized and it created a very complex protein or gluten structure, and often that can get a result in the heart.
Okay. I'm prone to vertigo. Can a trampoline induce it?
A trampoline could actually help it because our balance is set by the mechanism inside the ear and also the bottom of the feet. So when you're jumping on the rebounder or the trampoline, it actually restores the balance. So that's the good news.
If you want to avoid medications, how do you deal with emergency pain situations such as kidney stones and how to manage extreme pain?
Yes, with extreme pain, I always look at what may be the cause, but I have known people that have gone through severe pain in a serious accident and taken high-dose cayenne pepper. In fact, one man whose hand went through a roller, he said that high-dose cayenne pepper brought more relief than Tylenol.
A friend has random seizures. She's only 13 years old. We don't know the cause. Any advice or natural remedy?
Whenever I hear of seizures in a child, I always think of possibly the childhood vaccines, because they contain neurotoxins in them which damage the nerve cells and can cause seizures. But in his book, Stop Autism Now, Dr. Bruce Fife's not just talking about autism, also attention deficit syndrome and seizures. And he talks about the ketogenic diet, and he shows that for the last 100 years, doctors in the John Huntley Hospital have been using the ketogenic diet to control seizures. And Bruce Fife, he says you can kick the body into ketosis by supplementing with coconut oil.
What are your thoughts on non-hybridized wheat?
On non-hybridized?
Non-hybridized wheat.
It's called ancient grains. I'm so glad it hasn't been hybridized.
Is mushroom coffee bad for cancer?
Yes. Next question.
Can you reverse obsessive compulsive disorder?
Sometimes you can. It all depends on how cooperative the person is to be able to do that.
What do you think of allergy shots?
I think they're atrocious.
Okay.
And they do not work. They do not cure allergies. And I've known people that have had allergy shots for a year and then all other silent problems result, and yet the allergies are still the same. Drugs never cure disease. They just change the form and location.
We have more questions, but we have a special closing also. So do you want more questions and then our closing?
Oh, we can do a couple more.
Okay, we'll give you a couple more. Everybody wants to know what Barbara thinks. Okay, how to remove dandruff?
Dandruff can be the result of shampoos that have chemicals in them. Sodium lauryl sulfate. Sodium lauryl sulfate is in most shampoos, and sodium lauryl sulfate kills the hair follicles and it makes the shampoo foam up. So please buy shampoo that does not have sodium lauryl sulfate in it. You might need a magnifying glass to buy shampoo that doesn't have that in it. So changing shampoos may help with dandruff. Sometimes dandruff can be the result of a yeast presence in the body. Sometimes dandruff can be the results of over washing the hair. So I guess you change your diet, change how often you wash your hair, and it could improve.
Just a quick question. So what products would you recommend, like for your hair conditioner, things that, these are everyday, these questions that we want to know? Yeah.
Well, I'm Australian. I don't know what's in the shop. But you just read your labels.
Okay. How can you keep honey from crystallizing?
Why do you want to stop it crystallizing?
I don't know. We need to ask them.
But if you want to cook with it and you want it to be runny, you just sit the honey in a bowl of boiling water, and that'll stop the crystals.
How do you detox from mold exposure?
Well, there is a book called Self-Heal by Design. And in that book, I have the antifungal stage 1 diet and the antifungal stage 2, and it shows all the dietary and herbal things that you can take to detox from mold and fungus.
Okay. And what are the best practices to regulate the nervous system?
Best practices to regulate the nervous system, we've got a formula here. Here's the formula.
Sure.
And that increases blood. You'll get a better blood flow through the body, and it is the blood that feeds the nervous system. But there is a herb called St. John's wort, and St. John's wort is a nerve nourisher, and that means it nourishes the nervous system, so that can help.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for our closing? Yes, or do you want more questions? No, we're okay? Okay. Well, we're going to be closing our 5-day event here. And I'm very sad about this time. I know everybody is too. Had just a blessed time meeting everybody. You guys have been great, absolutely great. And we appreciate each one of you. And we don't want to, we want to continue our friendships and our relationships. And we will do that by letting you know what we're doing next. We want to start an email going out, like a little monthly newsletter type thing, so we can communicate and keep the information coming because it's so important. And we want to make sure that all of you are getting correct information out there. I know we've all made some good friendships and you bonded with each other, and it's just kind of like a little camp meeting here, I feel. So we love you all.
Thank you.
We're going to have one quick thing. And Barbara, we'd like to thank you. You've been so gracious, and I know this takes a lot of time and you travel, and we know you do this because you have a message to get out and you're trying to get that out to help everybody. And we do appreciate you and we do love you. We're going to do one thing here. Dan.
Can we switch the... So they asked me to have a prayer for you, a blessing as we all leave. And I know you've been sitting for a while, so if I'm going to ask if you would please stand. We are going to sing a song also, and maybe some of you know it. If you know it, sing. If you don't know it, like we said earlier in the morning, just learn the first stanza and then sing with us. There's a line in the chorus that says, "Meet me in heaven, we'll join hands together." So if you feel comfortable, only if you feel comfortable. I feel comfortable with the lady next to me, so I am going to do it. Grab somebody's hands when we're singing that, and when we sing, we'll join hands together. We'll just lift our hands like this, okay? And the reason I say this is that I too have enjoyed getting to know some of you. I've spoken to some of you and have found out where you were from, how many hours you flew here or drove here. But the sad reality is that those of you that live around in the area, you're probably going to maybe visit us here at the church sometime. But there are some of you that maybe we won't see ever again. And my hope as a pastor is that maybe I shouldn't say ever again, but we'll see you in heaven. That's what the song is all about. Maybe we won't see you here, but meet me in heaven. So we'll sing this song. Then I'll have prayer to officially close the whole weekend here, the whole week that we've had these meetings. The song is titled "Side by Side." It's plugged to the...
Side by side we stand, awaiting God's command, worshiping the Savior King, living by His grace and moving on in faith. Jesus loves us and He sees us through. Meet me in join hands together. Meet me at the Savior's side. I'll meet you in heaven. We'll sing songs together. Brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Soldiers of our King, to go where Jesus leads. Like a fountain, we overflow. Heaven is our cause, save every soul. Pray that we all will be there. Meet me in heaven, join hands together. Meet me by the Savior's side. I'll meet you in heaven. We'll sing songs together. Brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Meet me in heaven. Join hands together. Meet me by the Savior's side. I'll meet you in heaven. Sing songs together. Brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Pray that we all will be there.
Would you bow your heads with me as we have prayer? Father, we are so thankful for the information that we received. We are so thankful for the fact that you have given us bodies that heal themselves. Now, I just pray that you may help us to be strong, to rely on God, to be able to put all these things that we have learned into practice. And so I pray that if there was anyone here that is suffering from illnesses, that as they begin to implement the things that they have heard, that your Holy Spirit may give their bodies the strength to be able to heal themselves. because I believe it is the Spirit, it is God that heals. Father, I want to pray for each one that is traveling, whether traveling just 3 miles away from here or 3,000 miles. Please keep all of us safe. Help us to arrive to our homes safely, to our families, as we move on with life. I pray most of all that the Holy Spirit, that Jesus may remain in our hearts. May he be the one that will continue to guide and to lead us in every aspect of our life. Father, I want to also pray a special prayer for Barbara O'Neill. I pray that you may continue to bless her with health, strength as she continues to share these wonderful messages about health to others. Keep her safe as she travels. And may we, all of us, one day together meet in heaven to see you face to face and to personally thank you for all that you have done for us. Thank you once again. Be with us now as we leave this place, is my prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the Lord bless you. Go in peace.